From a young age, I was a prostitute. My family rejected me because of how I made a living, and my people saw me as a traitor. But God rescued me and turned me into one of the most unexpected heroines of the Bible. I am Rahab, born in the great city of Jericho. I made the mistake of making a living by selling my body, but one day I made a brave decision. I saved the lives of 2 Israelite spies by hiding them in my house and protecting them from those who were pursuing them. In gratitude, they promised to protect me and my family when Jericho fell into the hands of the people of Israel. Thanks to my faith, I not only saved myself from certain death, but I also became an ancestor of King David and eventually of Jesus, the promised Messiah. I invite you to stay until the end to learn my entire story and discover valuable lessons that can help you in your spiritual growth. In the heart of Canaan, surrounded by hills and fertile valleys, was Jericho, a city famous for its fortress and prosperity. My name is Rahab, and my life within those imposing walls was anything but ordinary. As a resident and prostitute, I had a unique perspective on the secrets hidden behind smiles and friendly greetings. At that time, Jericho was a place where many cultures mixed due to its strategic location on trade routes. Although there was much wealth, there were also political and religious tensions. The city's rulers worshipped many gods and performed rituals to maintain prosperity and protection. But beneath all that ritual and commerce, there was growing concern about the news of a wandering people who claimed to be guided by an invisible and all-powerful God. Living on the walls of Jericho gave me a privileged view. From my window, I could see the caravans bringing spices and fabrics from distant lands, and I heard stories from travelers about miraculous battles and a God who parted the sea for Israel. Among all those stories and commerce, I found myself reflecting on my life and the role I played in this city. Although some might think my profession marginalized me, it actually allowed me to better understand human nature and the power dynamics that wove the fabric of life in Jericho. However, I began to feel a growing unease, a sense that something was about to change. The walls that once seemed like symbols of security now whispered to me their fragility. What if those stories about a God who frees his people and removes obstacles were true? Had Jericho placed too much faith in the fortresses I had built around myself? I invite you to reflect on my story and think about your own walls. Are you really as strong as you think? Or could it be that, as I discovered, your defenses are more fragile than you realize? We all have the opportunity to look beyond our barriers and question the beliefs that have protected us but may also limit our path to a deeper understanding of what it truly means to be free and protected. One night in Jericho, which seemed like any other, suddenly changed when the door of my house opened to let in 2 unknown men. They were Israelite spies sent by Joshua to explore the city, anticipating what many feared but few dared to mention, an imminent invasion. As a woman used to listening more than speaking, I quickly understood who they were and the danger they represented, not just to themselves but also to me if anyone discovered that I had taken them in. However, beyond the fear, I felt an inexplicable peace. Something inside me, perhaps that growing curiosity about God, pushed me to act. I decided to hide them under piles of clothes drying on the roof, a place so common that it would be the last to be searched. Soon, the search by the authorities of Jericho became intense. The soldiers arrived at my door with tense faces, driven by urgency. Men from Israel came here tonight, they said, demanding that I hand them over. But at that moment, my decision was already made. I lied to save the spies, saying that the men had left and suggesting they might catch up with them if they hurried. As soon as the soldiers left, I went up to the roof to speak with the spies. I told them how the fear of their God had fallen upon our city. I spoke of the miracles their God had performed, of which we had heard, such as the crossing of the Red Sea and how he had guided his people through the desert. These stories had circulated in Jericho, sowing fear in the hearts of our warriors. I negotiated a vow with them. In exchange for my help, they promised safety for me and my family when they took the city. The symbol of our alliance would be a scarlet cord hanging from my window, a sign of their promise and my faith that they would keep it. After obtaining their consent, I helped them escape through the window, using the same rope that would mark my salvation. I think back to that night and wonder how many times in life we overlook the power of an act of faith. Sometimes, a seemingly small and simple act can change the course of our history. I invite you to reflect on your life. Have there been moments when a decision based on faith put you on the path to a better and unexpected destiny? Perhaps, like me, you will discover that in the most dangerous moments, the greatest rewards are found. In the days following the encounter with the spies, Jericho fell into a state of growing anxiety. Although daily life continued, the air was charged with palpable tension, like the silence before a storm. Every whispered conversation, every fleeting glance among the people, and every daily routine were filled with fear of the inevitable. In my house, the place that had served as a refuge for the spies, I plunged into deep reflection on the covenant I had made. I had secured salvation for myself and my family, trusting in a God who was not mine and in a people I barely knew. I placed the red cord in the window, a simple thread hanging as my only hope in the face of impending destruction. That rope not only reminded me of my promise to the spies, it had become a symbol of my transformation. My decision was more than a survival strategy. It was an act of faith in the God of Israel, whose stories of power and mercy had filled my people with fear and awe. By choosing to believe in the spies' promises, I left behind the practical beliefs and pagan gods of my people that had defined my life until that moment. Curiously, the more I learned about this strange God, the more sense I found in his call for justice, his power over nature, and his care for his people. This God did not demand elaborate rituals or blood sacrifices like the gods of Canaan, but rather faith and obedience. With each passing day, the red cord took on more meaning. It was not just a promise of physical salvation, but also a bond that connected me to a new identity and a new community. My family, though initially skeptical, began to share my faith as they saw the conviction and peace it brought me, even in the face of the possibility of imminent death. Reflecting on this chapter of my life, I invite you to think about the promises you have made and the ones you have received. Are there red threads in your life? Commitments you have hung on the window of your soul, waiting to be fulfilled? Sometimes, the promises hardest to believe are the ones that lead us to the deepest transformation. As I learned in those days full of tension, true faith is not just believing in what is seen but maintaining hope in what is promised, despite all evidence to the contrary. The weight was unbearable. Day after day, from my window marked with a scarlet cord, I watched as the Israelite troops marched in a supernatural silence around the walls of Jericho. This ritual repeated itself over and over under the scorching sun. The people of Jericho, scared and fascinated, watched from above, whispering to each other about this strange siege that did not use weapons but the power of faith and obedience. The seventh day dawned with a tension that could be felt in the air. Something was different. I could sense it in the heavy, impatient atmosphere. With each lap Israel made that day, the number 7, so sacred and powerful, came to life. And then, at the end of the 7th lap, the silence was broken by the sound of trumpets and a war cry that seemed to shake the foundations of the earth. At that moment, the imposing walls of Jericho, which had withstood so many sieges, began to tremble and finally collapsed. The chaos that followed was indescribable. Cries of horror and surprise mixed as the structures that once symbolized the fortress of Jericho were reduced to ruins. However, amid the destruction, there was one structure that remained intact, my house on the wall, marked by the red cord. The Israelite troops kept their promise to protect me and my family, taking us to a safe place outside the Israelite camp. This act of salvation not only changed my destiny but also that of my family. The certainty that we had been saved by a higher power, not by chance, strengthened my faith in the God of Israel, who had so spectacularly demonstrated his power and faithfulness. This event marked a new beginning for me and my family. We were not only physically saved from destruction, but we were also spiritually transformed. Integrating into the Israelite community was not immediate, but over time and with shared faith, we found our place in this new social and religious structure. As you reflect on the fall of Jericho, I invite you to think about the walls in your life that need to be torn down. What obstacles have you built that are preventing you from reaching your full potential or experiencing a deeper faith? Sometimes our most secure structures need to be shaken, even destroyed, to reveal a deeper and more meaningful path of faith. By trusting in a power greater than ourselves, we can find true security and a new beginning. Thanks to what happened in Jericho, a new life began for me and my family. The Israelite community welcomed us, although initially with some mistrust due to our Canaanite origins and the obvious differences in our beliefs and customs. But over time, those walls of disbelief were torn down, just as the walls of Jericho had been. My story, once marked by shame and marginalization, gradually transformed into a story of faith, inclusion, and purpose. My marriage to Salmon, a leader of the tribe of Judah, was a turning point not only in my life but also in the history of Israel. Through this union, I became part of the lineage that would eventually give rise to key figures like King David and much later, Jesus of Nazareth. This marriage symbolizes a union not only of hearts but also of cultures and destinies, a testament to the redeeming power of God. Over the years, as I watched my children grow up in a community that valued faith, courage, and loyalty, I reflected deeply on the nature of redemption. I learned that redemption is not just escaping a dangerous situation, but also finding purpose and meaning in life. I was known as the harlot of Jericho, but that identity was redeemed and replaced with that of a mother, wife, and ancestor of kings. My journey taught me that the labels the world places on us should not define who we really are or determine our destiny. Instead, each of us has the ability to redefine our lives through our actions, our beliefs, and above all, through the grace that is offered to us. Looking back, I see that my story shows that no one is beyond the reach of transformation and redemption. Every life, no matter how marked by mistakes or misconceptions, has the potential to become a story of hope and renewal. As you think about this, I invite you to reflect on your own story. What walls do you need to tear down in your life to move forward toward your redemption? How can you allow your past experiences to become a legacy of courage and faith for future generations? Just as in my case, your story can also be transformed from a story of survival to one of deep meaning and purpose. May you find the strength to leave behind the old and embrace a new beginning full of promises and possibilities. My name is Rahab, and this is my story. Now, sitting in the silence of my home in Israel, I reflect on the incredible journey I have traveled. From the walls of Jericho to the safety of a family and a people who adopted me as one of their own, I have seen the hand of God perform unimaginable miracles and transformations. As you reflect on these truths, I invite you to think about your own life. Consider how faith can guide you through difficult decisions, how redemption is always within your reach, and how you can begin your transformation today. Let my story inspire you to find that scarlet cord in your life, that sign of hope and promise of salvation, and dare to hold on to it with the certainty that God is on the other side, waiting with a future full of promises. So my story ends, not as the end of a book, but as the continuation of a story that continues to inspire all who hear and live it. Now, I invite you to click on the recommended video on the screen to discover the amazing story of Elijah, the brave prophet who challenged kings and false gods. Come with me to discover his miracles, like the fire from heaven on Mount Carmel, and his faith that remained in times of adversity. Learn how Elijah was taken to heaven in a chariot of fire and the lessons of faith and courage he left us. Don't miss it.